What if your dealership's trade-ins could be digital, profitable, and more efficient? In collaboration with our partner dealers across Europe, AutoOne.com has developed the best tool for a quick and easy trade-in process, the new AutoOne Price Indicator. Access the tool via AutoOne.com or the AutoOne.com Ava mobile app and insert the trade-in details, equipment, and condition using only the vehicle identification number. After the evaluation, request a price with a single click. AutoOne.com analyzes the data from millions of actual transactions and real-time bidding behavior in 30 countries to offer an attractive price to both you and your client in less than 10 minutes. Your trade-ins will soon be published on AutoOne.com, where you get offers from more than 60,000 dealers from all over Europe and receive payment right away after the deal is confirmed. Manage your trade-ins on AutoOne.com.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for part 2 of our first session of the year. I hope you've enjoyed both the sessions that you could follow and also the networking break. What we'll do for now is I will show you a bit what we still have planned, but I first wanted to show you again a slide that normally would have been shared at the start, which was my fault. This is the program that we will have for the remaining of the year. So in April, we'll have a look at the outlook of used car supply and sourcing. Then in June, optimizing B2B sales. And then in September, an update basically about artificial intelligence in the defleeting and inspection process. And again, please keep the date free for the real life remarketing forum in Dublin later. What we have yet for you now is we're going to talk more about optimizing sales. How do we optimize future sales of electrified vehicles? How do we ensure that value is optimized? How do we ensure a smooth sales process? And we'll cut this into 3 parts. And first, we're going to talk about the topic that has come up a few times. This is basically battery. How important is this, and how important is it for a customer? And we'll hear an update about the initiative from the European Car Remarketing Association. Just like before, we're launching 3 poll questions right now. So if you go onto the poll section, you can vote. It's about how important is the state of health check. Do we believe that there's an issue in consumers' perception regarding the BEVs? And is the used car sales process not yet adapted for BEVs? So if you completely agree, it means that it's not yet adopted for this. So these are the 3 poll questions that have been launched. You can keep on voting on them for the next 10 or 15 minutes. So what I'm going to do now is invite our first speaker. And I think Martin is in, or he's coming in right now.
Hello.
Thanks a lot, Martin, for joining us. I know it was not without a challenge. So that's great. And I will give you the word. And if you can share yours, I'm going to unshare my. Okay, you've got your presentation coming up. And then the floor is yours.
Thank you, Johan, very much. And thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to present to you on the Remarketing Expert Track today. I would like to give you to Rheinland's view on the importance of an independent battery assessment and the impact on the used vehicle market. Maybe short about me. My name is Martin Dillinger, and I've been working on alternative drive systems at TÜV Rheinland since more than 4 years. I'm in charge of all projects related to battery life cycle management on the automotive sector. Before that, I worked for many years at a large OEM in the engine development and later in complete vehicle development. I'm very blessed to be able to give you an insight into the importance of battery reports and status update about the work of the Cara battery or the Cara work group Battery Health. Okay, before we get some complications with my screen, I will stop my camera. Maybe this is a little bit easier. Okay. First, I would like to talk to you about the market of lemons. This is a term for a market where the buyer or the customer cannot judge the value of the goods, for example, due to the lack of expertise. The supplier, on the other hand, knows exactly what he is offering and in which quality. Example of such markets are the automotive market or the market for products or services. In general, all markets in which you are offered something for which you cannot judge the value. Such markets are really inefficient. But why is that, and what happens in such markets? The buyer wants a good quality, but this quality cannot be verified. This creates the danger of overreaching. It means to get an advantage by ignorance of the consumer or buyer. Consumers always react in the same way with a significantly lower willingness to pay. As a result of this, the provider or the seller counteracts with a reduction in quality. This leads to a downward spiral. This development does not lead to a positive balance for everyone. One solution to counteract this is to send the right signals or credible signals. Examples of this are reviews on portals or for the corresponding product or service from other users or buyers. These are very strong signals for potential buyers or customers. In the automotive market, of course, there are also very strong signals. There are, for example, programs for evaluating used cars. We call it a 100-Punkte check in Germany, I think 100-point check, or a used car test. Manufacturers of vehicles also send at the moment very strong signals to the market with extended warranties. As a result, buyers are quite prepared to accept a higher market price. Then on this slide, let's take a closer look at the value proposition of extended warranties and used car programs in the car sector. The first point on the slide relates to extended warranties. A 5 to 7 year extended warranty has a proven positive impact on the resale value. Research has been done on this in a conjunction with the Autovista Group. In figures, this means that 36 months old vehicle and the compact class has an increased market value of around 500 euros. This is a very clear added value that can also be made statistically visible. The second point deals with used car programs. In the case of used car programs, an added value of between 400 and 600 euro is achieved in remarketing after 36 months. Of course, this also depends on the brand and the vehicle segment. The observation period of 36 months is chosen because it's usually after this time that the vehicles emerge from the leasing contracts or enter the market as used cars to a greater extent. If one multiplies the whole thing a little for the German market, one sees under the given conditions that 300,000 used cars of this age class enter the market annually through such used car programs, and one achieves an added value of 500 euros at a sales price, that the total economic added value of 150 million euros is achieved. This is classic win-win situation for both seller and buyer. Through the used car programs, the seller can achieve a higher price and the buyer is willing to show a higher willingness to pay through this signal. Now, I would like to move on the electromobility and evaluate the potential of correct signals. The right tool from our point of view is a battery certificate that gives the user a statement of the current state of the battery and the desired time. We have simulated and calculated the potential of a higher resale value Through such a battery certificate or a better battery condition certificate, we see a potential of 450 euros or 2% in the C segment, again under the general conditions, 36 months and 45,000 kilometer in the 3 years. The left bar in a light blue currently represents the value that can currently be found in used car and residual value lists. Actually, there's no manufacturer independent statement on the battery condition. So we currently refer this value as a value without signal. However, it also corresponds to the worst possible value under current market conditions. I will go into more detail about the individual use of bad or better usage later. I remind again on slide 1, the market of lemons. It does not mean that all offered products or services are bad, but only that buyers and sellers tend to agree by non-existent signals rather at a lower sales value. Means here that vehicles were not actually badly used, but only that willingness to pay is currently at that level. Now what we have done here, we have simulated a premium for a better signal proven use and come to a potential of 2% or 450 euros in this segment. This premium is considerable added value on the used car market. Maybe the question, why is not more than 450 euros at the moment? Do the long manufacturer warranties that vehicle manufacturers give, they send a very strong signal to the market at the current time. This, of course, keeps the residual value high. If something changes here, the added value can, of course, increase. And also, do the larger batteries in the current electric or pure electric vehicles, we also expect premiums over 450 euros in the future. In summary, I would like to state here that the battery certificate currently always have or has a positive effect on the resale value. On this slide, I will explain why we are should concerned with battery reports. In our opinion, battery reports are the right tool to independently show the condition on the one hand and to enable the monetary valuation based on the other hand. In 4 influence factors present here again point out the importance of such battery certificates. The first point on the top left shows that electric vehicles will have a significant market share in the coming years. Further, as already mentioned below left, lithium-ion batteries are the most expensive single component of the vehicle. Also highly complex products whose current value is difficult to determine in the vehicle. Various studies show on the top right, such as the study by McKinsey here, the road ahead for the e-mobility, that users have fears about battery quality and therefore still have reservations when buying used here electric vehicles. And least but not less important point concern the battery aging. This is just as individual as the many different driver profiles of the e-mobilists, from the forward-thinking driver to the standard driver and the sporty driver. I will explain the aging factors and influences also a little bit later. Based on these factors, we believe that a battery report will create transparency and residual value and increase confidence in this technology. In our view, customers will not accept or acquire a used electric vehicle in the market without a battery report in the near future. Car dealers, leasing companies, or fleet operators have no indicator at the moment of the residual value and the expected useful life without evaluation of the battery. To back up our assumptions with facts, we conducted our own study on the acceptance of battery checks in 2020 with, for us, a very exciting results on this slide. So, as part of our study, we asked over 800 electric vehicle drivers and nearly 100 prospective electric vehicle buyers how important a battery test certificate on the health of the traction battery will be them as a decision-making aid when buying a used electric vehicle. In the graph on the left, more than 90% of the already active electric vehicle users, 92.4 to be exact, answered that the battery test would give them certainty when buying. Only 2.7 do not see any added value in the condition determination of the traction battery. In the right graph, among us interesting in buying, we were even at 97.8% of those who said they were in favor of a battery test certificate. 2.2% would forego a statement on the conditions of the battery when buying a used car. This shows the importance of the condition of the battery for the used car market. Transparency is demanded by the end customer. Furthermore, many vehicle owners see a condition report for trade-ins or private sales as very useful. Here, careful usage behavior can generate added value in the used car market. So on the next slide, maybe on my time is a little bit too technical. I will go directly to this slide. I think this is a little bit more important. We all know that a lithium-ion battery age. We can also understand this aging with our smartphones every 2-3 years. Then the battery is usually so aged that daily use can no longer be enabled without intermediate charging. This process also takes place with electric vehicles. Why is this? So the usable capacity of rechargeable lithium-ion batteries is subject to both calendar and cyclical aging. This means that the usable capacity on the one hand ages over time to the calendar aging, and on the other hand is reduced with an increasing number of charging cycles to the driving and charging, the cyclic aging. Here, the industry resorts to accelerated aging process in which the entire life cycle of the traction battery is simulated and the shortest possible period of time. Distinction is made here between calendrical and cyclical aging is different physical laws apply here. Stress factors in a daily use are the state of charge, the depth of discharge, and the charging power. Temperature influences also have an impact. Relevant parameters, they are considered in more detail, for example, the capacity, internal resistance, or also the remaining service life. However, TÜV Rheinland is working here with a partner on his side in battery diagnostic precisely on the manufacturer independent assessment of the battery conditions. And on this slide, I would now like to take another look at various user behaviors and resulting strong differences in the individual aging of models. In the table, we have analyzed 3 different driver types. Boundary conditions such as mileage and age are identically for all drivers, as are the climatic conditions. Only changes in usage behavior, such as driving style and the type of charging, were changed here. Driver 1 represents the worst battery treatment. General driving style can be described as very sporty, like to aggressive, means strong acceleration and rarely regenerative braking. Frequent use of dual carriageways and motorways, and also frequent use of fast charging. An example, high stress during discharging and charging are factors that have a negative effect on aging. Driver 2 is our normal driver, standard user, who represents the average behavior and is resulting most neutral effect on battery aging. This type of driver is in between the sporty, aggressive driver and the sparing, immobilized. This driver is aware of how to conserve battery life, but unplanned events mix the usage profiles here between aggressive and predictive, which bring us to the driving type 3, the predictive driver. Driver 3 shows better battery handling behavior. This type of driver is likely to take full advantage of the potential for energy recovery, a concept known as eco-driving. The anticipatory driving style is gentle on battery aging. There are almost no unplanned events, which means that optimized route planning and later optimal charging can be planned accordingly. In the graph on the right, we now show the SOH development under the 3 simulated treatment conditions, worse, average, and better battery treatment. While all 3 SOH show a gradual linear decrease after the first year, the graph clearly shows how a high-intensity battery treatment can produce a significant difference, here up to 4.5% in residual capacity after just 3 years. Furthermore, the simulation can be used to make predictions about the end of life in the vehicle, assuming that 80% SOH, or the state of health, is the end of life for the lithium-ion battery. We see a range of 41% end of life difference between the worse and the better treatment. So on this slide, I would like to tell you something about the activities of the CARA work group, Battery Health. The aim of the CARA work group, Battery Health, is to facilitate remarketing and to support the residual values of used battery electric vehicle cars or battery electric vehicles by trusting in the battery conditions. An independent assessment and certification is the right tool to give the customer security. But yeah, with the help of the 4 pillars, the CARA working group will try to achieve this goal. The first, create an independent SOH standard. The second, evaluation of the technology and process options for the vehicle-specific battery evaluation. Third, get out of the lab and test technologies under real conditions. And the fourth, proposal for settlement process in case of disputes of buyers, the classical warranty management. We see the timeline on the ground. We are currently on the timeline at the provider presentation, where suppliers of battery diagnostic present their service solutions. Okay, this is my last slide. Before I close, I would like to round off my presentation with the following insights. First, with a battery certificate or battery report for all used battery electric vehicles, the average residual value will already rise. The second, on the one hand, should used car buyers insist on a certificate for independently assessed battery quality, including usage history. And on the other hand, the third point, also used car sellers should provide a certificate to get the maximum resale price. And last, fleet and leasing companies, together maybe with her fleet managers, could create incentives for better use of or better usage of the batteries and electric vehicles, similar to the case of increased and reduced kilometers.
I think that's a great summary, and I think it really supports the fact that it's crucial, this part. I think we have seen it from an RV forecasting perspective and everything, and it also shows the fact that indeed the attendance in this SOH working group is enormous. It's almost every lease company, every inspection company, every service provider is there. So that shows indeed the importance. So great to have this supported with real data. Maybe one question that I would like to ask, which was asked in the chat as well. Will it make a difference in terms of RV uplift? And I think it's a great question from Jan. In the RV uplift, if it's an independent one or if it's an OEM driven one, because of course you've got car manufacturers brand that can provide this as well in their own workshops. Is there research about, or not really, or what's your personal feeling?
I think for the end customers will be a manufacturer independent test are the right signal for the used car market. Also, it is important that we have an independent battery assessment out of the manufacturers, but I must also compare a car from manufacturer A to a car to manufacturer B. Is okay when I can compare one model from one manufacturer, but it is more important for the end customer that I also can compare independent different manufacturers or different models of different manufacturers together.
Okay, great. Thanks for the answer. Thanks for your insights. I think it supports it really, as I said, with data. So that's a perfect start for our expert panel that comes a bit later when we talk with the OEMs. Martin, take care. Thanks a lot for your contribution, and see you in another time, and hopefully at the Remarketing Forum in Dublin. Thank you, Martin. Okay, great. Now we're gonna move over to Ian Wright. We've asked Ian, as I've explained a bit in the beginning, to, at every expert track, to do a small survey or to do a small online survey and give a view from him as a customer almost looking at certain things. And Ian, today, Ian, welcome. Ian will talk about how, when he goes online, how easy or how hard it is to be convinced to buy electrified vehicles. So Ian, I leave it to you, and you can share your screen right now.
Brilliant. Thanks, Johan. And thanks for inviting me. I think just to sort of give a little, if you like, backdrop to it, for want of a better word, as you say, is we've approached this from a point of view of, if you like, trying to see it from a customer's point of view. And in doing so, we did a bit of research just to look to see where typical behaviors are. And, the obvious thing that jumped out was that, the research that's being done currently is suggesting that if we stick with UK, which is the market we've looked at in the first instance, one of the recent surveys said that 55% of British drivers will consider buying a used EV in the next 5 years. So that sort of gives an indication, if you like, as to where we're going to get with all of this. I'm sorry, Johan, can you still see me?
I can see you. Can you share your screen?
I'm struggling just at the moment. Sorry, just bear with me.
Below on the share.
I've got it. It just won't, for some reason, it won't share my screen.
Maybe now I've stopped sharing mine. Maybe this normally it's not an issue, but
no. Johan, could you continue with the presentation which we've prepared? And if you can drive it, I can't get mine to load for some reason. It just will not. It won't accept.
Just give me a few seconds and then I will find it. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. So
then,
what I was basically saying was that in putting the research together, we've looked at this obviously from a perspective of a customer. It's very clear that the move over to BEVs is now everywhere, and I think, as probably has already been talked about throughout the course of today, the pandemic has accelerated the interest in this. So in terms of us sort of delving in and having a look to see what influence the if you like, the manufacturer approved programs was having, it was very insightful from our side to be able to look to be able to see what the manufacturers are doing. I don't know, can you see the presentation now, Johan? You are on mute, Johan, sorry.
Now it's there.
Brilliant. Okay, fabulous. Yeah, so if we can move to the next slide. So what we did was we looked at all of the, if you like, the primary manufacturers that we know have already got EVs in the marketplace or BEVs in the marketplace. And perhaps, the thing that we were most instantly looking for was to say, are there any influencing factors within the promotion of the programs that would help or assist a would-be new adopter going to EVs in terms of helping them convince them that this is the right thing? Martin's just made a raft of good points. I was making notes as he was going through his presentation around the fact that battery quality is clearly the single biggest, if you like, concern for a would-be buyer. That came out also in the survey that we looked at. Overwhelmingly, people were saying that battery condition was their primary concern. So I suppose when we were looking at the programs per se, we were looking to try to see whether or not the OEMs and a couple of the independents that we looked at had focused on this. Now, I guess the best way for me to position this from the point of view of a consumer is to say, if you dig deep enough, you can find it. But it isn't really an influencer at this stage, or it isn't something which was clearly apparent in terms of us being able to identify with the fact that the manufacturers and the independents had recognized this as being a key element. Now, it would be easy to say, well, a potential buyer of a used EV is going to do the bulk of their research looking as if it's a new car. But actually, from our experience, and I've spent the last 20 odd years working in the industry and working with OEMs with the development of their approved programs and if you like, their networks and how the programs interact with them. It was difficult, if you like, without being ultra critical of everybody, to say that there was any kind of influencing factor. And I think that from a behavioral point of view, it's naive to think that everyone's going to look at the new car information and then just transition across to used. I think there's a misnomer that people say, well, a typical used car buyer is somebody that can't afford a new one. And that simply isn't true, because if you look at, for instance, someone who is in the market to buy a 2-year-old Tesla, for instance, they can definitely afford to buy new EVs as an exception to that. So I think the first thing we have to do is take away, if you like, the theory that people will naturally gyrate and do all their research based around new vehicles. I think if you're diving into the used vehicle market, there should be some commitment from the OEMs and from the independents that are offering these vehicles for sale, if you like, to give us or to build a case as to why these are a good choice. The battery warranty is fairly typically across all manufacturers 8 years, circa 160,000 kilometers or 100,000 miles if you're based here in the UK. And as I say, if you dig hard, you find that information. With the likes of Tesla and Polestar, the information is more readily available around that. But then if you look at Tesla as by way of an example, the complexities of their warranty in terms of the structure of the car, the warranty period is a different period, obviously, to the battery, which is, as I say, 8 years and 160,000 kilometers. And similarly, there are restrictions on the warranty for things like the platform inside, the navigation and infotainment system, just by way of an example. And I suppose that started to lead to a degree of frustration when we were actually looking at the various different sites and the vehicles which were available. If you like, some of the more conventional approaches which made us, if you like, engage and look more was, as Martin alluded to, with the value of the OEM programs around the extension of the warranty. So, for instance, with Polestar offering 24 months, Toyota and Lexus is offering, which was quite interesting, which they introduced, I think, a couple of years ago now, where if you take the vehicle back to them for servicing work up until it's 10 years old, or in the UK case, 100,000 miles, the warranty period is renewed every year. So as a retention tool for the retailer, it's fantastic. Customer benefits, obviously fantastic, because you're getting another year's warranty. I guess if I had to offer a summary of it, it was that it was a frustrating exercise. It wasn't something that naturally enabled me to say the OEMs are providing us an easy, if you like, an easy route to understand EV ownership, and also, if you like, satisfying some of the concerns, as Martin's just alluded to, in terms of battery state of health and, if you like, reassurance through the warranty. As I say, you have to dig to find out the details, and when you do get to it, some of it is quite confusing. Perhaps if we can have a quick look. The other thing that jumped out at us was the complexity of it and the language that gets used in some of these circumstances. And I mean, bearing in mind that obviously myself and my colleague that were involved in sort of putting this together have been around the industry for some time, and obviously are used to some jargon. But the extract we've taken here to show you is from the Mercedes site and talks around, if you like, the implications of the battery certification for certain models in the Mercedes-Benz range. And it's just baffling. I mean, if you've drilled into this level of detail and you start looking at it, you can see that the conditions for the warranty vary dependent on the mileage, which is dependent on the different types of battery that are fitted to the respective models. And quite overwhelming, you know, for if you like, a regular consumer. I think that you would find this quite baffling. If we could move to the next slide. So I guess the question is, there's a couple of questions I'd pose, as always with research. I think it often, if you like, raises more questions than it provides answers. So the first question is, you know, will OEMs and ultimately some of the competitors, in terms of independence, try to simplify this as a process? Do we acknowledge that this is, you know, that the approved programs, certified pre-owned programs, have a place to, if you like, try and simplify the process of BEVs and, if you like, the warranty packages that go around them? Hyundai, by example, for instance, have introduced a very simple, the Hyundai Promise, which covers all the powertrains, and it's 2-year warranty on all cars, up to 5 years, 120,000 kilometers, irrespective of the drivetrain. And that then led us to another question, which was, you know, are we looking at this? Are we looking at the programs to try to satisfy a circumstance that doesn't exist? You know, I think the manufacturers' approaches, as we've looked at it, really are focused on treating battery electric vehicles in the same way as you would internal combustion engines. And maybe that might be the right thing to do. But when you then think about it from the consumer's point of view, it's still, to me and for my colleague that assisted me with putting the information together, led us down the route that said we would expect to see something more that provides a peace of mind in terms of stepping into what is still seen as being a relatively new technology. A couple of the previous slides, this slide and the following slide show examples of adverts which are being run by independents. And the reason for highlighting these two elements effectively was that in both instances, these cars, one is still under its manufacturer's warranty. So the i3 is still under its manufacturer warranty. The Tesla is a 2017 and therefore falls outside of the scope of the standard warranty. But the highlighted box is red, effectively reflecting the fact both of the independents are only talking about a 3-month or 90-day warranty period. Now, 46,000, well, nearly 47,000 pounds for the Tesla in question, immediately begs the question as to say, for a car of that value, with embracing the technologies and all of the functions and, if you like, degradation issues that Martin's just highlighted, are we really thinking that that's sufficient by way of warranty coverage to satisfy somebody buying at that level? I don't know. Let's see. Johan, over to you.
Okay. When we were putting this together, it led a lot on what's available online, and that's why I've added just one slider here. Because we have done also in the past for the last year, starting 2019, and we actually presented the research in 2019 in Estoril, I think, at the conference, Remarketing conference, is a research about, at that point of time, it was about how ready are the used car websites and used car locators for online sales, or basically distance sales. This basically is changed over the years into a different form, other questions, other focus, and it focuses on creating a trust in the vehicle by having an ideal display, creating trust in the vehicle again, but also in the seller, then trying to accommodate the sale through lead management and things, and also having an optimal search. We have now just moved, I think we've done it now 8 times for the different OEMs or players. Why? And I'm going to use this to then take back what Ian has had from his research to try and make it very visible. Is like, if we want to close a deal online, we basically want to have 5 points right. People need to trust the vehicle, trust the seller. Afterwards, if they trust both, they still need security. Security is more warranty. And the question came in that if an OEM give now 10 years warranty, is it enough? It could be okay, but still they might not trust the capacity, even if there is a certain warranty. Then also this fourth point is search. My car. People need to drill down in a search in order to come to 3-4 vehicles that they can compare, and then they choose the only one which they say this is the one. If they can't do this, they can keep on searching. And a lot of websites, even brand websites, don't offer that capability. You can't even compare a petrol with an EV, which of course for them is a challenge. And of course it needs to be very convenient. That brings us to 5 points that we are going to add in this type of research. One is what we've discussed before, the state of health. Then point 2 is basically a specific warranty. Point 3 are there need to be new description fields, new search criteria based on EVs. A lot of websites don't offer things that you need if you want to search for EVs. And then of course the feasibility. People that come on there are not yet convinced about the feasibility that they will drive with an EV. So there needs to be additional information as well. And then point 5, affordability. We've been talking about cost of ownership. Basically, people need to be convinced that they will make up for the higher price maybe with running cost advantages. So in the new one that we will do within 6 weeks, I think we will add those points as well. Just to highlight the fact that these are new areas where used car websites, locators ideally need to move into and be added. Now I'm gonna stop sharing mine here or end the show. Okay, we're here. And now I need to move, because we've moved a bit, to the conclusion, Ian's conclusion, which is this one. So Ian, I just handed it back to you for a quick conclusion before we go into the expert session.
Brilliant. Thanks, Johan. I think the things that were very clearly apparent from, if you like, the conclusion of the exercise centered around the fact that the general consensus was that the OEM approved program sites have the ability to positively influence buyers' behavior in terms of, if you like, trying to clarify the situation on EVs and, as Johan's just touched on, highlight the advantages to ownership. That's missing at the moment. It's very clear, unless you're prepared to dig very deep and, if you like, dive between the manufacturers' new car sites and used car sites, so that you get a better picture. Because there's no question within the new car arena, there's a lot of information there which is obviously pertinent to battery electric vehicles and all of the associated benefits that go with them. But as I just touched on a few minutes ago, I don't necessarily think that we should treat used car buyers as people that can't necessarily afford new ones, and therefore their starting position in terms of their search may very well be on the approved sites. And I think to that end, we've highlighted, if you like, the first element about talking to a battery electric vehicle customer. So there needs to be more rationale around the program in supporting the likely concerns. Again, I'm going to go back to Martin's point about certification and security around the life expectancy and chargeability of the battery. And I don't think we can come away from the fact that the customer's perception of the cost of the battery is still, the primary area of concern. We need to demystify the technology, and in that we need to find some common language that consumers will understand. Even things like wall chargers or EV charge points, each of the manufacturers seems to use a different terminology. Mercedes-Benz currently have a used offer on with their BEVs where there is a contribution to a wall charger. Fine, but there is no description within the offer, if you like, that explains what it is and what it does and what the likely benefits are for the customer. And as I say, just the use of technology makes it sort of difficult or more difficult than it needs to be to understand. As Johan's just touched on, we need to be able to facilitate a comparative search. So if a customer is doing the comparison between, for instance, a battery electric vehicle and either a petrol, diesel or hybrid equivalent, we ought to be able to do that simplistically. And if you like, the benefits need to be very clear in terms of whether or not that's total cost of ownership or running costs. Now, to Tesla's credit, and I think we mentioned this when we were talking earlier, Johan, they do talk about a costed saving within each of the vehicle prices. But that, of course, is an approximation, and it's based on a theoretical exercise. It isn't necessarily factual. And again, from a customer perspective, it perhaps leads to more questions than it does, if you like, proffering answers. And I think the other element that we need to focus on is addressing the issues of customer peace of mind. We've talked about state of health. But I think the other thing is that, given the fact that we know that this is a more expensive technology to buy into, but not necessarily a more expensive technology to own, we need to make sure that the warranty offering is clear. And the difference between the warranty, if you like, for the car itself and the battery and if you like, the drivetrain technology needs to be much more simple for people to understand and reassure them.
Sorry, could you close a bit then? To leave enough time for the
of course, I'm sorry, Johan. And the final element around this, obviously, is that there's a great opportunity. This offers the first route, effectively, for many into EV ownership. As I say, 55% of the UK population are looking at EVs in the next 5 years. So, let's not be caught wanting. Let's not get overtaken by some of the independents, if you like, embracing this technology and clarifying it quicker. and basically develop clear and simple retention programs for EVs so that we're engaging people earlier. And that's as quick as I can go, Johan.
Johan,
you're muted.
I'm on mute. So, welcome, Olivier. Welcome, Václav. You've been a bit in the waiting area, but I think there's some interesting things to talk about, things that came this afternoon. Also, interesting results from the poll that are, to me, a bit striking, and we will get certainly back to that. First of all, maybe, Olivier, I might give the word to you. What's the journey that Hyundai has done in there? Yeah, because you've got a bit of history, certainly as well, in hybrid electric vehicles, plugins, and everything. So, how has the journey gone? And used cars, how has this come into, and how do you see things?
Hyundai launched the first EV in 2016. And we had a strong product plan, so we had also a visibility of what would come in the next year. So we had the clear vision that we had to anticipate the needs, because to sell a new EV was at that time different than selling a new ICE already. And we could see that the same problem would also come for EVs. So we wanted to develop a program future-proofed. We asked many customers, we made focus group. We asked the dealers, we asked national sales company, distributors, and as I said, a lot, 80 customers, EV used car customers in Europe, to ask them what they expect in the future, what they expect from us, and how we can support them going to EV. And that the result is Hyundai Promise, which we launched in 2020 with a dedicated promises for EVs, but the same treatment for a customer if he wants an EV or if he wants an ICE. A specific support, but the same promise.
Okay, so I think so. Part of the thinking from your side was we need to ensure that the process for the used car customer is as advanced as if they buy basically a brand new.
They need the same support.
Okay.
The idea was that they need the same support from the salesman. And at Hyundai, we have launched Charge My Hyundai for charging infrastructure valid in Europe, and the same support we want to give to our EV customers. And this was clear from the beginning. We want to give them advice on wallbox charging infrastructure, charging solutions, to help them coming to EV, because they were lost as well as used cars for new cars.
Yeah, I think this is also what we see if we go online. Basically, you have new vehicles, you look at EVs, there's a lot of explanation maybe on cost of ownership, on wall boxes, on all the things that give you confidence. Then you go over to a used car area, and then it falls in the very traditional used car locator thing. So indeed, that should basically a mirror. That's it. Okay, Václav, you're happy to have you here, because of course that's a complete different angle almost. You're a performance brand, quite young. You are probably also the youngest amongst the speakers that we have seen as well. But how do you see it, and what's the status of your exploration, let's say, with Polestar?
First of all, good afternoon, everybody. Happy to be here. I think that Hyundai doesn't need any introduction. On the other hand, Polestar, we are the new kid on the block. We are the new brand, as you mentioned, Johan.
Yeah.
Pure performance, sustainability, those are one of our core values. I thought that it would be worth to provide just a little bit of context of what is our sales approach and what is our operational setup. So we are part of the Volvo Group, HQ in Sweden. We started our new car sales mid of 2020, so quite young, but we are already seeing that some of the short cycle vehicles are entering the used car market. what is, I think, most important is to mention that our business model is very different. So we don't have dealers. We have partners who are operating our brand and product experience centers in various countries. And we have a very strong focus on selling online. So if you want to buy a Polestar, the only way to do it is to buy it online. When we talk about new vehicles, this has required us to have a very different approach to remarketing, because traditionally, for all brands, most remarketing related operations are handled by the dealers. And since we don't have them, we had to build our own e-commerce platform, where currently we are selling directly. So we own our own stock and we sell it to the end customers in the markets. But it is also developed in a way so that in the future we can connect a selected group of partners who can also sell on that same platform. And we as a brand could guarantee the same customer experience as we offer the customers for new cars. So that those are the most important elements that I think need to be mentioned in order to provide context to what I'm going to say further.
Okay.
So the transaction is happening online. So the e-commerce piece is really important. We want to give the customer convenience in not having the need to go to a dealer or haggle around the new car or the used car price. So the prices are fixed. And we believe that is the future. Corona actually accelerated the online purchases worldwide for various different consumer goods, as it did also for vehicles. So people are less and less worried to handle a larger amount transactions online. That of course puts some constraints on how we can sell those cars. So we don't offer test drive of the car. If you want to experience a vehicle, you can test drive a car, which is probably a question, how do they sell the cars? On the other hand, we provide a 2-week satisfaction guarantee to the customer to build the trust and confidence that if he doesn't like the vehicle, he has the right to return it and cancel the transaction, and all the money will be refunded fully. So this is our approach, how to get around the not having the physical compounds where you can kick the tires and talk to a salesman and then sit around a table and try to push the price down. So we believe that is the future, and we see with the first experiences that it is valued and it is appreciated by the customers, as our customer satisfaction around the first used cars that we have put on offer is pretty high.
Okay, you've done quite some research as well to understand used car customers. What was the key takeout on? Are they different, and what does it mean for the sales process of used EVs?
So the first answer to that, overcoming the customer concerns of switching from an ICE vehicle to an electric vehicle, I think they are same for new car buyers as for used car buyers, and it has to be the same communication. They are getting into a new type of technology there. On the other hand, in the used car market, the used car buyers are slightly more conservative in terms of they want the car to be proven, the technology to be proven. They have their concerns stepping into something new. Of course, there are related questions to what is the battery state of health, how the car was charged, how many charging cycles did it have? Was it only going into the fast charging or charging in the front yard at home overnight, which is the healthiest way of charging an electric car? So, on one hand, it's the same concerns as for new cars. On the other hand, used car buyers are a little bit more conservative on their purchase, and they are not really the pioneers in terms of adopting new technologies. I think that's something that needs to be mentioned.
But this will change, because you speak about the early adapters, so the first commerce UEV. But this will change because in a few years the EV will be the normal customer, and they are eventually a little bit more conservative, but they are normal customers. The profile will totally change. And also, we don't have the same customer group as well.
We will come to the new normal for sure. Since 2 years back now, everybody is investing into electric vehicle technology. There is not a single OEM who's not looking into it for various reasons, as discussed in the previous presentations during this afternoon. So I do agree that it will become the new normal going forward. On the other hand, there are plenty of people who would love to have an electric car, but simply cannot afford to buy a new one. So we are lowering the entry point to the brand by offering the customer a used electric vehicle, which is more affordable, yet we give them the same confidence. Okay, I'm buying it directly from the brand. So the car has been checked, the battery is in a good shape, the car has a full service history, only the trained technicians have handled the car when refurbishing and preparing for the next cycle. So those are the key points on that matter.
You know, there's an interest. Well, we have here an interesting expert debate, but in the chat there's also a small debate going on, honestly speaking. When Dirk Marco asked the question, when we've got 10-year warranty, why do we still need an independent SOH? And then there are a lot of comments coming like, yeah, independent is okay. No, it needs to be independent. So coming back to this state of health, Olivier, what do you think? Because of course, the CARA working group is working on an independent one, which probably lease companies would require an independent used car salespeople. At Hyundai, you also have got a state of health that you create, and the debate that's going here a bit, is this enough for it's almost like the used car salesman explaining, yeah, it's okay, which used car salesmen don't have the best reputation normally with customers. So how you see the state of health evolving?
Yes, so we have in our promises for electrified vehicles or EV, the battery state of health certification. This is something that customers requested already 2 years ago and that we have introduced, but we are luckily able to do it on our own because our workshop tools, our computer in the network, they can test the battery capacity for Hyundai products, only for Hyundai products. Honestly, we don't have the feeling that it's not enough for customers, because when they come to Hyundai, they trust the dealer because we know the product, we know the brand, we are representative. So for us, it's totally enough. For an independent trader or another brand selling a Hyundai, it might be necessary to have a multi-brand tool. I understand, but for a brand dealer, a brand solution is enough.
Okay. How do you see this at Polestar, Václav?
Battery state of health is, I think, super important. I think that both the independent entities like TIF or DECRA, same as the OEMs, need to work jointly on that subject. One important thing that I see going forward is that all the cars are connected. So over-the-air updates enable us to read out data from the vehicles around customer behavior, charging cycles, and so on. So we need to learn from the real-life customer behaviors in order to understand how to optimize the battery performance going forward. It is not only the capacity, but also the speed of charging, the temperature, the number of charging cycles, number of fast charging cycles, and so on. So I think that's going to give all OEMs a huge opportunity to optimize, and we could also optimize the software in the car that is managing the battery. So with the software updates, there are quite a few things that can be done going forward to limit extremes, to monitor battery temperature, and so on. So I think there are plenty of opportunities. We are working on that subject together with our mothership Volvo. as we are sharing the service network with them and many of the service tools. And Volvo is also moving towards full electric. So that is a joint effort internally. Currently, we are running the sort of the famous 100-point multi-point checklist before offering the car to the customer. And we are also checking whether there are any issues with the battery. What is interesting is, maybe for the wider audience, is that if there is a problem with one of the battery cells that is actually originating from the production, this is usually discovered within the first 6 months. So after the first 6 months, the battery performance remains the same or very stable. So actually buying a pre-owned electric vehicle in some way is quite safe, or even safer than a new car. Of course, that we have very stringent quality standards to what car can leave the factory. But in a way, this has been proven. And if the battery performs well within the first 6 to 12 months, it's going to perform pretty well for the following years.
Yes, this is something we can predict also for the future. The battery state of health might become less important in the future, because it was very important at the beginning. People were afraid comparing a mobile phone to a car. And the first generation of EV, or even the second generation, had a low range of 200, 160 kilometers. If you lose 20% of capacity, it's huge. But the current EVs, they have 450, 500 kilometers range. If you lose 10%, you still have a lot of range in front of you. So maybe in the future, people will be will have less questions, as they will see that, as we see in the branch, we are all professional here, and there are not that many problems on EV batteries.
No, yeah, I agree, Ian. Is that not a bit the challenge in perception? I've always said in the past, when I was working at an OEM, we're all working in automotive, so we are not the right persons most of the time to ask things to. Is there not a perception challenge? I think it was one of the questions, and there partially agreed was 70% that agreed that perception of customers is not completely in line with reality. In Norway, it has taken them as well 9 years before the average customer now says it's okay. So do we need to do still something to accompany the sale for the first years? Ian, what do you think?
I think we do in the first instance, and I think there's some really good comments just come back. Olivier referred to it when you asked him about state of health certificate. Does it need to be independent, or can it be dedicated just to Hyundai? The reality is, all the evidence at the moment says that customers are concerned about longevity of the battery and its ability to charge. So I think as an industry, we owe it to them to give them some kind of peace of mind. I also agree with Olivier, and in terms of, I don't think it matters whether it's an independent certification or if it's an OEM certificate. The thing that is important is that they're the same, and that the things that they state are the same. Because as a consumer, if you're comparing a Hyundai that's being offered by the Hyundai retail network, and you're looking at one that's being offered, for instance, by a fleet or leasing company or an independent, from a consumer point of view, we just want it to be simple. And it's like looking at fuel consumption figures or CO2 emissions, isn't it? If we've got two sets of measurements, they need to be the same, so that the customer can make an informed choice based on the information that we provide. To answer the latter part of your question, Johan, do we need it? The industry experts are saying not. But the reality is, the perception of customers at this stage is it's still smoke and mirrors. Electric vehicles are still, for most people, slightly scary. It's not what they're used to. And absolutely, just as the guys have said, in I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years' time, it will be the norm. And we won't need the same level of, if you like, of security. But right now, we're talking about people transitioning from a drivetrain that they've been used to for 20, 30, 40, 50 years into something which is seen as being completely new. And I think it's reasonable that as an industry, we hold their hands through some of that process and reassure them.
Another aspect that came in as a question, used cars are sold by, let's say, the salespeople, and why should customers basically believe what a used car salesman says? That's a bit a very short summary of what was in that chat or question. But what has been seen or done to bring the salespeople of the dealers up to a certain standard, or what needs to be adjusted? What's the experience on that point, Olivier? From coaching, training, whatever. Yeah.
Yes, as we launched the program, the CPO program, the program was defined, but there were still a lot of things to be done. And one of these strategic aspects was to take the salesman with us. So we developed training, online training, and tutorials for the salesman to understand first the Hyundai promises, and then the specific promises for EVs. What are the difference and how it has to be done? At the same time, we have created guidelines, of course, but you know guidelines are created and stay on other places than on the salesman deck. So it was very necessary to train the salesman, to explain carefully what customers expect, that they can understand, okay, we do this, we offer this because it's expected, and then to refresh regularly the salesman's knowledge with training. It's really key. On the other hand, to be honest, I'm sure they cannot understand all the technologies for all cars, all brands, and we have to help them, to give them support, technical information about each car, and also to give them support the charging infrastructure. They can't explain how to charge a car and how to which provider to choose. So we have this from the new car. It's exactly the same, but we want to facilitate the salesman's process.
Okay. Any ideas there from you, Václav? Of course, it's still for you very young. You don't have the enormous amounts of used cars, but anything there in the process or things that you've installed or are planning to install?
So for us, I think things are a bit more simple than for the brands who are transitioning from ICE into electric. Nevertheless, we have done in Polestar, we've done a survey, and we've talked a little bit about it, Johan, and a little bit of mystery shopping around the different dealerships of other brands who are selling both electric cars and ICE vehicles. And it was done on 40 different dealerships of different brands. And what was quite shocking for us was to learn that actually out of the 40, 24 salespeople advised against buying electric vehicle. And that is, it's not that Polestar is looking for the affirmation of okay, we need to do it online if we want to convince the customers and handle it carefully. But I think that the other brands have the challenge that they need to first convince their own dealer network that this is the future. Of course, that for them it means selling an electric car doesn't need so much service, doesn't need the oil changes, filters. You have a cabin filter and you check the electricity circuits. If everything works, the brakes, and off you go. The car is checked. It's very simple and quick. So there's not that much space to make margin in the workshop. I don't know if that is the main reason, or they really need convincing, and it's going to take the next few years until they are actually the first thing that you're going to be offered when you walk into the normal dealership of other big brands is an electric car. So it was quite an interesting finding for us.
There is something we saw with our customer focus groups is that at that time, the customer who came to use EV wanted an EV. They did not hesitate between an EV and an ICE. So this is why sometimes they knew more than the salesman about the car. Then the support for the salesman is to explain how the customer will be able to charge and what are the benefits of the car itself, but about the technology, the customers knew a lot already. Even if they are not early adopters, they took the decision to come to EV. This will also change in the next years, I think.
I think if I can just chip in as well, Johan, especially around Václav's comment around the behaviour of the salespeople, I think equally, if you like, trying to keep my feet firmly on the ground here, we have to be mindful of the fact that the salespeople will be trying to sell what they've got. And as a lot of these manufacturers and dealers are morphing into EVs, in a situation we find ourselves now where there is such a radical shortage, these behaviours will also influence them promoting what they know they can get and what they know they can sell. Sat here in the UK, virtually every automotive advert now is the manufacturers promoting their EVs. But we all know in reality that when you go and visit their facilities, that actually what they've got are still forecourts full of petrol and diesel vehicles. And therefore, I suspect that salespeople's behaviour is reflecting supply. Just my thought for what it's worth. I don't think they're bad people, Václav.
I don't think that either.
No, indeed. And I think we have to acknowledge as well that for salespeople, it has become more complex over the years. All brands have launched enormous amount of different vehicles, segments. Then there is powertrains. There was hybrids, plug-in hybrids. So it has become much more complex. And the last comment from Mike, yeah, there you've got a very complete list of what they actually all should do or be helping the customer. I think we can conclude in general that I think personally that the EV advantages are there also in used. I think there still needs a time that we need to help the customer to understand, because their perception. If you talk just to friends, a family, you talk about EVs, you hear the strangest things they say. Yeah. So there is this perception is completely not in line with what we know. A battery is much better. There are loads of opportunities. When you've got an EV of 120,000 kilometers, there's still not a lot of service. Not a lot can go basically wrong. So there are a lot of opportunities, but a lot to be done there as well. I would like to maybe ask a last question to Václav and Olivier. In a previous poll, we've asked whether leasing companies were conservative on their residual value setting or forecast, where the majority said yes, they are, whether they are completely or not. So I would like to give the salespeople, Václav and Olivier, a bit of just the last comment on what would you advise them? Why should they not be as conservative as they are now?
I can start easily because I don't agree with the comments. We work with leasing companies since years. I'm also in charge of fleet, and we really discuss about residual value. And we did really see an evolution on their confidence on EV since 2 years. And some leasing companies, because they have also strong commitments on CO2 and EV, they have really uplifted the residual values in the last 2 years. If the product is good, if the new product is good, the range is good, then the residual value is good. The residual value, the low residual value, I don't say it's a legend, but it's less and less reality.
Good. I'm happy. So, any comments from you, Václav?
First of all, I think that all the leasing companies were providing customers with funding to purchase the cars, which are actually costing more than the normal engine. So many customers opt for some way of financing it, are helping us with the adoption of the technology. Because when the car goes into an operational lease, the customer doesn't have the concern about the residual value. Taking it on their shoulders, and we need to work hand in hand with the leasing companies. I understand that there are concerns by the big leasers around the residual value and what's going to happen. I would say it goes a little bit the same like for the normal private buyers. Is the car is much less complex than an ICE vehicle. Diesel engine has 1,500 parts. Electric engine has 15 parts. There is an inverter, there is a battery. I think everybody is focused on the battery state of health, which is one one item that can go wrong, obviously, and then it's going to cost a lot of money. On the other hand, there is 100 things that can go wrong on the ICE car, especially around the engine, clutch, not following the service intervals, oil changes, and so on. So there are risks there as well. And overall, I think there is the balance. It's just that on electric cars, you see the one big item, which is the battery, while on the ICE cars, there is plenty of things that can go wrong there as well. So I think the goal of every leasing company is to be realistic. I think we all want to be realistic in terms of what is going to happen. It is not our intention as an OEM to artificially inflate the residual value expectation into, 3 years, 85%, despite that the corona now shows us that we can sell 1-year-old car with 10,000 kilometers for 96% of MSRP. But I think that's not going to last that long, and it's going to this strange period is going to pass. So I don't think that it is an intention of anybody to be unrealistic. We want to have our operational lease competitive. They need to be learning about the technology. We are there to support. We are trying to be transparent with our leasing partners in terms of what is our pricing strategy. From the Polestar perspective, we don't experiment too much with discounts. So also the price stability on the MSRP is something that they are, of course, considering. How likely are the brands to discount? Are there some possibilities in the battery technology that the OEMs could reduce the price by 5-10%, which would kill the RV in turn? I don't think so. I think that OEMs also understand that the RV needs to be stable, and if there are advances in the battery technology, that they are going to be brought into the market gradually. So it's going to be an evolution rather than a revolution. So because nobody wants big surprises, everybody works with tables and with the risk management. So this is how I think that OEMs and leasing companies need to work hand in hand in developing and pioneering the still new technology, we can say.
But the used car market, the used car market evolution also helps and support residual value, because the same that the new car new car increased last year, the used car EV market also increased in Europe. We tracked the figures in 10 countries, and the sales increased by 70%. This means that also newcomers are coming to the used car EVs, and this will also help. We have reduced our stock by 50% this year, so it's running also in the right direction, and this is RV supportive.
Yeah, I can confirm from our side, 100% agree to that.
Okay, Václav, Olivier, certainly as representatives of OEMs, a special thanks to be here. It's always a bit of reluctancy from the OEM side, so I'm more than happy that you could join, and thanks for the input. I think we can conclude with the fact that the journey isn't so bad right now, but I think we can optimize along the way for the next few years until the average public, like we have seen in Norway, has automatically confidence because they need to get acquainted with it. So Ian, Olivier, Václav, thanks for your contribution, and hopefully see you November in real life in Dublin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Johan.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna have just some closing 2 slides, basically. One is a sincere thanks to our partners, Autorola, AutoVista24, Stampit, and Auto1. Without them, this would not be possible. Of course, our speakers, I don't know if you have seen it, but 2 of them were in isolation today. I hope you didn't see who it was, but thanks again for them specifically because they were doing an extra job. Thanks to our advisory board, where we have another meeting within 2 weeks, and of course to all the attendees, because it was a very interactive session with a lot of questions. So thanks a lot. The last one, very important to have your agendas. Certainly put the next date in. We've talked about used car supply. we're going to talk about the outlook, and of course within that, because we're still going to have a bit of a lack of supply, as Andrew did give us a perspective that was a bit worse than I thought. Actually, we're also going to talk about sourcing and where we can source cars and what's the optimal way now, and put the date in 16th of November for the Remarketing Forum in Dublin, Ireland. Take the day before to travel there, and don't take a flight too early in the morning on the 17th. That has been proven to be a very good advice for the evening before. So thanks a lot, and hope to see you next time on the 28th of April. Thanks.